States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will again call for a moment of silent reflection. Calling the meeting to order. This meeting is posted and announced in accordance with Chapter 231 PL 1975. Mr. Jacobus, please call the roll.
Mr. Kugler. Here. Mrs. Torres. Here. Mr. Zangari.
Present.
Mrs. Lombardi.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Here. Items to be presented by administration is a public hearing on the 2014-2015 school budget. Mr. Jacobus.
Yes, tonight we're meeting the qualifications of the state of New Jersey by having a public hearing on the budget. The budget is approved by the Executive County Superintendent of Essex County, and a process that is very specific in terms of recognizing revenues and appropriations. There are actually two resolutions that we would be voting on tonight. One just recognizes the overall operating budget and the grant entitlements, and the other recognizing the tax levy. That's number one, and the second one basically recognizes an ability of the district to use a bank cap, which I'll explain a little bit later in the presentation. I'd ask the board to entertain that in Resolution 1, the numbers that are there will not change, but based on conversation with the county office, and the advertised appropriation, there's a line on page 4, 17, 11-00240, which is the support services for school administration. And there is a line 11, which has all X's, and then a 2X, and that's employee benefits. And based on our backup, this is really just, how should I say, cleanup work. They are suggesting that based on our backup information for the benefits, there's just going to be an asterisk on the resolution that says we will transfer $439,895 from the benefit line into the support for the administration, based on backup information. So it doesn't change the overall budget, it doesn't change the tax levy or anything, but so we'll ask for this stat so they will recognize the resolution that changed this, based on our conversation. Going forward, everybody, we made available a summary. That's kind of a guide that reflects the process that we go through and the key components of the budget for next year. These are things that will be put into the detail that are submitted to the county, so they're in a summative fashion here. Our mission statement, which has been consistent, I think, and everybody can see, it supports the Common Core curriculum compliance and positions the district to support student learning and do so in a fashion that is representative of the community, and then also of the financial accountability that the state expects. The budgetary compliance is simply a list of those acts over the last several years, including the 2008 School Funding Reform Act and the School Election Law, that the budget has been submitted, and that we in turn are really following all of these laws as we develop this budget. The third piece is state aid. Very important part to the school district here, substantial amount of the budget, and something the district has little control over. And this year, as you look down through transportation aid, special education aid, equalization aid, security aid, under adequacy aid, all are exactly the same as last year. There was no change on that. The only change that we did receive additional money for the park readiness aid and for pupil growth aid. So it represents about $94,000 or $47,430 for each of those categories. The extraordinary aid, $531,771. It says projected, and the reason for that is we are putting in the budget because we consistently have received that much money for extraordinary aid, and extraordinary aid is for students that cost the district, out of district, over $55,000 in tuition and expenses for special education, and in district over $40,000. We actually don't get notified to whether we're going to get that aid to the very end of the school year, believe it or not. So it's, the district has the option of including it in the budget based on its past history, or taking the chance that they can somehow fund their budget without it. The last 3 years, we've received funds similar to that. The student population for special ed has really increased. We have just as many, if not more, students out of district. So it's reasonable to put that in as an expectation. So right now, we have that included in our revenues. The other piece that's something new, was only established, I believe, last year, I think, was when they had the School Development Authority bonding, which was for some $12 billion over 10 years. For some reason, a couple years ago, they decided that everyone would have to help contribute to some of that funding. The $22,935 is Belleville's commitment. It comes right out of our state aid. We don't have a choice about paying it. And unfortunately, you really didn't participate in that bonding. So in some ways, it's unfair, but I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. On the second page, there's no questions there. I guess at the end, we'll go into questions, and obviously people will come to the microphone. We talk about budgeted fund balance and bank cap. In many years, districts are able to take money from 1 year, for instance, from 13-14 year, and project it into the next year to offset their revenues. And in this case, the first line indicates that we do not have that. The second line talks about bank cap eligibility, or cap banking eligibility. And that is something that the state monitors. And if a district spends less than 2% on the budget increase, it's considered being put in the bank down at the state. And so when you do need that money, and you do need to increase your budget, you have the ability to do that. And it's their numbers that basically are available to us. Last year we did use the bank cap. The budget was defeated, so in the negotiation reducing the budget after the defeat, we did not use all of our bank cap. So this year, the suggestion in the budget is to use, as you see, there's two different numbers there that we're using, and it is considered a 2% increase with the additional bank cap being put in. The next piece recognizes some of the expenditures. Some are mandated, and some have been created based on, the past history of past budgets. The first one is the charter schools. There's no choice in that. It's driven by the number of students from Belleville attending charter schools and in charter schools within the area. So that is $90,589. Actually, I think last year was some $70,000, so that's why it says 26%. So that's mandatory, we have no choice in that. I did give you a summary of the lease payments. These, as it says, that's partly for roof repairs, it's partly for the technology upgrades, partly for transportation by buses, and that's an obligation that basically was created prior to this year. We also have here, we're working with the Department of Education in how and their guidelines on how to handle the deficit from 13-14. They basically have told us to put in the recapitulation of balances and appropriation for that amount of $2,583,378, and it also is included in our appropriation. The total equalized tax rate is $1.28. I say the equalized, in your user-friendly budget, you see two different tax rates, but the one used really by school district is the equalized tax rate, because that's what the state uses when it looks at adequacy and how much you're spending, because you're compared to the rest of the state. The traditions, obviously, that are in this are the things that you've always tried to do. Rigorous curriculum, athletic programs, co-curricular programs, community educational expectations. There was most of the athletic programs, co-curricular programs at this point been carried forward in this budget in the same support that we've had in the past. So there was no reductions there. Tax obligations for all students, $36,249,715. The user-friendly budget is out and available. We made that available as soon as we could, as soon as the county approved your budget. And if we look at the total overall with grants, total bottom line increases $1,720,834, about 2.72%. Anticipated general revenues, as you can see, state aid and local taxes are providing the biggest support for the school district as expected. It's not really much of a change. Investments, tuition, and miscellaneous, $75,000. There's not a lot of interest rates out there. 10 years ago, you'd probably be making with the amount of this budget, you probably would have been making $300,000 a year in interest. There's just no interest out there. And the federal grants are consistent with our past grants, although we must say that the rule of thumb that the county and the state uses is that the district budget only 85% of the grants that they had in the previous year in case they're not funded. So you can't do a full expectation of being funded in that area. So that's down a little bit, but we would hope that maybe there's another $200,000 or $300,000 that if everything goes right now, that we might receive. And those grants are federal and state grants. That's IDEA money, which is basically to support special education, it's the Disability Act, and NCLB money, which we receive several titles, Title I, 3, and 2. There's several, but the biggest one is really Title I that we receive as support. And that money has been consistent in the district for a number of years. The last slide, there's just recent information that came out. It's been out there for a while. The district has been under adequacy for a number of years. Adequacy is a way that the state judges whether you're supporting thorough and efficient education. It's used across the state. They give it to us usually in a format that shows us how we compare it to our own county. It's available online. You can see it as it is compared to the entire state. But the state in Belleville here, as you see, expenditures, I'll just point out district's current spending level as compared to its adequacy budget. And that's your district's adequacy budget is the expenditure level that the formula says is necessary to provide a thorough and efficient education. So that's part one. The first couple of you are obvious, I think. think. And the other one is whether your community school property tax level is above or below its fair share, the amount that a formula says it should contribute towards adequacy budget. Belleville actually is $18 million under that adequacy budget. So that comes based on a long history. Now, that sometimes it would be from just really doing a good fiscal job and educating your kids at a level of support on the taxes that works. But then sometimes when it's done over a long period of time, you actually get yourself into trouble in the sense that you have fallen behind. So if you look at a budget, as we're saying up above there, is 64 million, the state actually is looking at it and thinking that it should be a budget in the neighborhood of 82 million. So it's not a criticism, it's just, it's a formula, it's the way the state looks at things. We actually did get $500,000 for being under adequacy. That's when you looked in our state aid. Last year was the first time you had adequacy aid. The question for the community is that a good thing to get $500 in state aid for being that far below what the state considers a fair tax and contribution by the community? So that debate is more on the legislative ledger, Slate and Trenton and how they look at things. It's not such a local debate, but it should be considered when you are looking at your overall budget. I think everybody has the user-friendly budget. It gives you some detail of a recap of balances, appropriations, revenues, and I guess at this time, if we want, we would entertain questions based on, your sign-in sheet. Unless the board has any questions of me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions from the board members? Just a comment, Mr. President. When I first got on this board about 5 years ago, our adequacy budget number was about negative 10 million. We're now almost negative 19 million. So it just goes to show you by state standards what we're operating at. Now you take a couple failed budgets, you take failed budgets that go down, and then the mayor and council cuts additional funding, and this is where you get almost $20 million shy of operating at state standards. So I just think it's very important to keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. Singer. Any other comments by board members? Hearing none, can I have a motion to open for public participation? So moved. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? All opposed? Vincent Frantantoni, please come to the podium, state your name, address, group affiliation if appropriate, sir.
Vincent Frantantoni, 129 Mount Prospect, representing the overburdened taxpayers. Before my prepared things I want to ask, just to respond to Mr. Zangari's, this adequacy budget, if we were to increase the budget by almost $19 million, that'd be over a $2,000 tax increase, and Mr. Jacobus seems very knowledgeable. If my figures are incorrect, please correct me. We got a tremendous amount of vacant properties foreclosed now. The town would be a ghost town. So let's not say that we're so below the state standards. What are you telling me? You'd like to increase the budget by $19 million?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that that's the state formula, how they look at how education is properly funded.
I've not only addressed Board of Education, municipal governments, I've testified before Senate and Assembly hearings for over 35 years. And I know how they skewed the language, screwed us. So, but just put that in perspective. So don't say, oh, we're so below. If we were what they wanted, this would be a virtual ghost town. You know, the median family income in this town is about $64,000. They couldn't afford it. they move right the hell out of this town.
Mr. Frantantoni,
Yes.
you're very knowledgeable of the budgets. Over the last 4 to 5 years, how many tax increases have we had? How many zero budgets have we came at?
You know, that's the same
Let's not
question,
forget,
and the
let's not
same
forget,
thing.
Mr. Frantantoni, that was also over the years of all the Christie cuts in education. So, I mean, we've dealt with a lot financially over the past 4 or 5 years here.
And we have to, because the people can't
Absolutely.
afford it. You got the mayor and council, who's running for re-election, bragging that we're the 5th lowest taxes in the county. But what they don't tell you is that we're also the 5th most distressed town in the county. Only worse are North, Irvington, East Orange, and Orange. So they make it sound like something great that we're the lowest taxes in the county. But the reason for it is because we're a distressed city. Our people are hurting out there. I'm a contractor. I work in these people's homes. They don't do kitchens and bathrooms. They're doing mandatory repairs. They all employ you when a roof leaks, when the door falls off the hinges and all that. I go in these houses, I see the condition of these homes. Maybe you people ought to come in there and see that. But anyway, in regards to the budget cap, at the last meeting I asked Mr. Jacob, there's 2 caps. One is the budget cap and one is the capital cap. Now, my understanding over here, the capital cap, you can put money in the budget each year for capital improvements on your buildings and all, and let that accumulate for repairs or expenditures on buildings. Is that one cap?
When you use the word capital, I'm not sure if you're thinking of capital reserve, which is
Capital
what...
reserve, that.
Okay, capital reserve would be in June, if we were to have any funds available, you have an opportunity one time to move that money into capital reserve. It then can be used for projects or debt service relief, and then the projects you identify in the following year's budget, and you ask to take the money out for specific projects. So it's got to be, targeted at some point, so that the taxpayers know what you're using that money for.
All right, that capital reserve is different than the budget cap.
That's different from the budget cap, yes.
Right. Now, if we add these things on there, you've got the state tax cap levy of $683,545. Is that the money in new taxes? That portion there?
Yes.
All right. And then from 2011 to 2012, the $301,000, I'm rounding these off.
Yes, that's
And that
right.
cap?
That's correct.